The legend of the basilisk has woven itself into the fabric of folklore across various cultures, captivating and terrifying generations. Known as the king of serpents, this mythical creature is often depicted as a serpent or lizard, its scales shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Tales describe it as a master of deception, lying in wait beneath the earth or within darkened caves, ready to unleash chaos upon any unsuspecting soul. According to ancient texts, the basilisk's gaze is its most fearsome weapon. A single look can petrify an individual instantly, turning them into stone. The creature's breath is said to be equally lethal, boiling life away in an instant. Yet, the most chilling aspect of the legend is its ability to instill profound fear even in those who have never encountered it. Whispers about its presence send shivers down spines and cause shadows to lengthen against the walls of homes. Historically, stories of the basilisk were often tied to warnings, stories meant to deter curious adventurers from venturing too far into uncharted territories or dark forests. In one tale, a young knight sought glory in slaying the beast, only to find his pride turn to ash as his body stiffened upon meeting its gaze. Villagers would gather around fires at night, sharing these cautionary tales, their eyes wide with both fear and wonder. Yet, for some in this village on the edge of a dark forest, these tales were merely fanciful stories told to frighten children. Skeptics dismissed them as primitive myths with no basis in reality. To them, the basilisk was just another ghost story until they began hearing whispers of strange sounds echoing through the woods, echoes that spoke not only of myth but hinted at something real and lurking in the shadows. As uncertainty crept into their hearts, they could not foresee how soon they would face a reality that shattered their disbelief forever. Nestled between undulating hills and a brooding expanse of forest lies the ancient village of Eldergrove. Time seems suspended here, where cobblestone streets weave between thatched-roof cottages, their walls adorned with creeping ivy and blooming wildflowers. Eldergrove is steeped in the aroma of wood smoke and the distant echoes of laughter, yet beneath its picturesque surface lies an undercurrent of dread. The dark forest, known to locals as the Shadowwood, casts an ominous silhouette against the sky. Its dense canopy filters sunlight into jagged patches, creating an unsettling chiaroscuro that constantly shifts with the wind. Villagers speak in hushed tones about the peculiar happenings within its depths, strange shadows darting in the periphery, unidentifiable sounds that gnaw at the edges of night, and an unsettling chill that lingers even during warm days. Some say they've seen fleeting glimpses of creatures, more peculiar than familiar, slipping through the intertwining branches. In recent months, strange disappearances have plagued Eldergrove, sending ripples of fear throughout the community. A young shepherd went missing while tending his flock near the forest's edge, and an elder vanished without a trace during a twilight stroll. As the news spread, anxiety seeped into everyday life. Children were called in early from play, and parents whispered warnings to stay close to home. Despite the growing fear, a steadfast group of villagers remains resolute, dismissing tales as mere superstition. They cling to their daily routines, believing that reason and logic will prevail over looming myths. Yet each sunset brings a newfound tension that tightens around their hearts, with shadows stretching longer and darker as they edge closer to an undeniable truth. Something sinister stirs within the depths of Shadowwood, and its presence is beginning to unveil itself. A reality intertwining with age-old legends that refuse to fade into mere whispers. In the heart of Eldergrove, a group of steadfast villagers gathered in the flickering light of the local tavern, the Rusty Lantern. Here, amidst wooden beams and the scent of hearty stew, the air was thick with spirited debate. This particular assembly consisted of skeptics, those who prided themselves on their reason and logic, unwavering in their dismissal of the basilisk and its terrifying lore. Among them was Thomas, a blacksmith known for his practical mind, who believed fervently in science and rationality. "Listen to yourselves," he exclaimed, slamming a fist against the table. "We've lost some sheep and a few townsfolk. Tragic, yes, but there's no need to conjure monsters from fairy tales. Perhaps it's just wild animals or even bandits causing this mischief." His words resonated with others who shared his skepticism. They argued that fear had a way of spiraling into hysteria, leading good folk to believe in shadows instead of seeking concrete explanations. Lucy, the village herbalist and another skeptic, leaned forward. "Have any of you actually seen this basilisk? Or are we simply perpetuating stories passed down over generations?" Her voice held a sharp edge as she reminded them that superstition often clouded judgment. She believed that rational minds should focus on tangible evidence and investigation rather than entertaining fanciful legends. Yet even as they debated, the atmosphere outside grew tense. Whispers from the forest echoed through the tavern, unsettling even the most hardened skeptics. The chilling tales began to weave into their discussions like an unseen thread, though they tried to dismiss them. Each creak of the tavern sign or rustle of leaves outside brought doubt creeping into their steadfast minds. As night deepened and shadows danced on the walls, they could not shake the feeling that perhaps they were overlooking something crucial, something lurking just beyond their understanding in the darkness of Shadowwood. As the days passed in Eldergrove, an escalating series of unsettling events began to unnerve even the most steadfast skeptics like Thomas and Lucy. It started with the livestock, sheep that had vanished overnight, leaving only patches of disturbed earth as evidence of their existence. One morning, the village awoke to find several cows lifeless in the fields, their bodies strangely stiffened as if they had encountered a sudden and fatal chill. Whispers of a curse took root in the hearts of the villagers, prompting them to gather in anxious clusters, exchanging fearful glances. More ominously, strange sightings began to emerge from the depths of Shadowwood. A group of children playing near the edge of the forest spotted an enormous shape slithering silently between the trees, its scales glinting in the dim light. When they raced back to tell their parents, their once excited voices turned into hushed tones of dread. No one believed them at first. After all, children often spun tales woven from imagination. But then, a seasoned woodsman claimed to have seen something lurking just beyond the tree line, too large to be any known animal, with eyes that seemed to burn with an unnatural glow. These incidents rippled through the village like a stone thrown into still water. Farmers began to report heart-rending howls in the night, sounds that sent shivers down spines and pricked at instincts long forgotten. Some locals began to gather in small groups under the flickering lights of lanterns, speaking of lore that had once seemed far-fetched. The tavern buzzed with speculation and growing fear, as even Thomas found himself questioning their dismissive stance. Could these bizarre occurrences be mere coincidences? Or was there a shadowy truth lurking deep within the heart of Shadowwood, a truth that called into question everything they thought they knew about their world? With each passing day, skepticism wrestled with fear, drawing the villagers closer to the edge of awareness that they could no longer ignore. Amidst the growing unease in Eldergrove, a brave and determined young woman named Ilara stood at the center of the village square, her heart heavy with personal loss. Just weeks prior, her younger brother, Samuel, had vanished while playing near the edge of Shadowwood. His absence left an unfillable void in her life, igniting a fierce resolve within her to uncover the truth behind the increasing horrors that plagued their home. Ilara had always been drawn to the stories of old, tales of heroism and mythical creatures, but now these narratives felt less like fiction and more like a call to action. She resolved to venture into the depths of Shadowwood, convinced that the truth about Samuel's fate lay hidden within its darkened embrace. Despite the warnings from her neighbors and their dismissive attitudes towards the Basilisk legends, she could no longer ignore her instincts. With little more than a dagger strapped to her side and a satchel filled with supplies, Ilara set out at dawn, determined to confront whatever may be lurking in the shadows. As she stepped beyond the familiar boundaries of Eldergrove, an air of trepidation surrounded her, each crack of a twig underfoot echoed ominously through the stillness. Yet she pressed on, fueled by memories of her brother's laughter and a promise she made to find him. As she delved deeper into Shadowwood, time seemed to lose meaning. The trees loomed larger and more foreboding, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Whispers from the forest danced on the wind, urging her forward but tinged with an unsettling warning. Ilara felt a mix of fear and determination coursing through her veins. She was not merely searching for answers, she was embarking on a quest that would test her courage and reshape everything she believed about legends and reality. With each step into the unknown, Ilara could sense that the legend of the Basilisk was not just a story, it was becoming an integral part of her own journey. A journey intertwined with fate and discovery as she sought to rescue her brother from whatever fate awaited him in the heart of darkness. As Ilara ventured deeper into her quest, she realized that navigating the treacherous Shadowwood alone would be a perilous undertaking. Determined to find allies, she returned to Eldergrove and sought out those who might share her resolve and possess skills that could aid her mission. Her first stop was the workshop of Thomas, the blacksmith. Despite his initial skepticism about the Basilisk, Ilara knew his strength and craftsmanship could prove invaluable. "Thomas, I need your expertise," she implored, recounting the strange happenings in the forest. His brow furrowed as he listened, the weight of her brother's disappearance stirring something within him. After a moment, he nodded. "I suppose facing the unknown is better than sitting idle in fear. I'll join you." Next, Ilara approached Lucy, the village herbalist, who had a reputation for her knowledge of plants and potions. "If there's a monster lurking in Shadowwood, you'll need more than steel to confront it," Lucy remarked, her voice steady but tinged with concern. Though she had dismissed the Basilisk legends before, the reality of recent events had begun to shift her perspective. "I'll gather supplies and remedies, perhaps we can find a way to protect ourselves." Elara then sought out Finn, a skilled hunter known for his keen senses and familiarity with the woods. He was often found tracking game or mending traps. When she explained her quest, he raised an eyebrow but ultimately agreed, intrigued by the challenge. "If there's truth to this legend, I want to know what we're up against." With Thomas, Lucy, and Finn by her side, Elara felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each companion brought unique skills, strength, knowledge of herbs, and survival instincts that would complement her own determination. As they gathered equipment and prepared for their journey into Shadowwood, Elara felt a flicker of hope. Together, they would face whatever darkness awaited them, united by a shared goal to uncover the truth about the Basilisk and rescue Samuel from the shadows. With their supplies gathered and hearts brimming with determination, Elara and her companions stepped into the foreboding shadows of Shadowwood. The forest loomed ahead, its dense canopy filtering sunlight into a dim twilight, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that felt both enchanting and perilous. The air was thick with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant animal calls, yet an eerie silence accompanied their every step as if the forest itself held its breath. Navigating the twisting trails, they encountered treacherous terrain, steep slopes covered in slick moss and gnarled roots that threatened to trip them at any moment. As they pressed on, Finn took the lead, his keen senses alert for signs of danger. "Stay close," he whispered, scanning the underbrush for movement. Each crackle of twigs underfoot ignited their attention, reminding them of the lurking threats. As dusk began to settle, strange occurrences unfolded around them. Shadows danced at the corners of their vision while flickers of movement seemed to taunt their progress. It was Lucy who first noticed something unsettling, a series of large, serpentine tracks imprinted in the soft earth near a cluster of trees. "These don't belong to any creature I know," she murmured, tracing the outline with her fingers. The discovery tightened the knot in Elara's stomach. Were these tracks a sign of the Basilisk? Around a small fire that night, Thomas recounted tales he had heard as a child, stories filled with ancient lore about the Basilisk's origins and its connection to powerful forces within Shadowwood. "Legend says that those who gaze into its eyes are cursed forever," he warned, his voice low and grave. The flickering flames illuminated their faces as they absorbed his words, fear mingled with curiosity as they realized that myth might be intertwined with their reality more than they had ever believed. Elara listened intently, feeling a rush of urgency course through her veins. With each passing hour in this enchanted yet dangerous place, she could sense they were drawing closer to uncovering not only the truth about Samuel but also the very essence of the myths that had haunted Eldergrove for generations. They were no longer merely seekers, they were participants in a story that had long awaited their arrival, a tale steeped in danger and discovery as they edged toward an inevitable confrontation with whatever lay hidden within the depths of Shadowwood. The deeper Elara and her companions ventured into Shadowwood, the more palpable the remnants of the Basilisk's presence became. As dawn broke through the thick canopy, they stumbled upon a chilling scene, a clearing littered with the remains of woodland creatures, their bodies frozen in twisted poses as if caught in a moment of terror. Finn knelt beside a small bird, its feathers pristine yet lifeless, its wide eyes were forever open, reflecting an abject horror that seemed to echo in the stillness. "What could have caused this?" Lucy whispered, her voice trembling as she examined the petrified forms. "This isn't natural." A sense of dread settled over the group as they continued on, their hearts racing with both fear and determination. Suddenly, Thomas spotted something unusual in the soft earth, a series of colossal footprints that appeared to lead deeper into the forest. The prints were unlike any creature he had ever seen, elongated and deep, as if a massive serpent had slithered through the very ground. "These tracks, they're unmistakably from the Basilisk," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. With renewed urgency, they pressed onward, but not without experiencing a growing sense of unease that seemed to suffocate the air around them. As twilight descended once again, an eerie silence enveloped the forest. They began to hear faint whispers that rustled through the leaves, words half-formed and indistinct, ghostly echoes that sent shivers down their spines. Elara felt a cold sweat on her brow. It was as if the forest itself was alive with secrets and warnings. That night, as they gathered around their dwindling fire, shadows flickered against the trees like specters watching their every move. Elara shared her fears about Samuel's fate, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and despair. What if he encountered something like this? What if he? Her words trailed off, leaving an unsettling silence where possibilities lingered. As sleep eluded them, the haunting whispers continued to weave through their thoughts. Each companion grappled with their own fears, but Alara's resolve strengthened. They were now undeniably on the brink of confronting something far more sinister than mere myth. The truth about the basilisk awaited them in the heart of Shadowwood if they could survive long enough to uncover it. The forest grew darker as Alara and her companions pressed on, an oppressive silence enveloping them, broken only by the soft crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Their hearts raced as they approached a slight clearing, the air suddenly thick with tension, and an instinctive dread crawled over their skin. Finn, who had been scouting ahead, motioned for them to halt, his expression hardening with alertness. From behind a cluster of twisted trees, the basilisk emerged. Even in the dim light, its formidable presence was undeniable, long and sinuous, covered in shimmering emerald scales that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Its body undulated gracefully yet menacingly, and it towered above them like a living shadow, its fierce eyes glowing with a predatory intensity. They could see the sharp fangs glistening in the half-light and note the deadly elegance of its form. Alara's breath caught in her throat as she stood frozen in place, gripped by both fear and fascination. The legends hadn't prepared her for this. This was no mere story, it was a living nightmare. The basilisk's head lowered slightly, fixing its gaze directly upon her and her companions. In that instant, time seemed to suspend as they locked eyes, an icy thrill running through Alara's veins. The power of its stare felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. She instinctively knew that to meet its gaze for too long would mean certain doom. "Don't look directly at it," Thomas shouted, breaking the spell that held them captive. He pulled Lucy back, who had been inching closer in an attempt to make sense of what they were witnessing. The creature's eyes flickered between them all, seemingly aware and calculating. Alara felt a surge of determination beneath her fear. They had come too far to falter now. "We have to move," she urged, gripping her dagger tightly as she signaled for them to retreat slowly without turning their backs on the beast. As they backed away cautiously, the whispers of the forest returned with renewed fervor, echoing warnings that intermingled with their racing hearts. The confrontation had awakened something primal within Alara, a fierce resolve that would propel them forward despite the terror gripping their minds. They were no longer just seekers of truth, they had become players in a deadly game against one of myth's most fearsome legends. And now that they had glimpsed the basilisk itself, there was no turning back from what lay ahead in their quest for survival and answers about Samuel's fate. As the basilisk's mesmerizing gaze bore down upon them, Alara felt a primal fear wash over her. Instinctively, she recalled the tales of its deadly stare, how the creature could turn the bravest of souls into stone with a mere glance. "We have to move," she shouted, shaking her companions from their stupor. The tension in the air was palpable, urging them into action as they sidestepped the spellbinding gaze of the creature. Finn motioned for silence, indicating that they should retreat slowly and deliberately. They stepped backward, each careful footfall a calculated effort to remain unseen while avoiding direct eye contact. The basilisk remained poised, its serpentine body coiling slightly as if ready to strike, eyes glinting like polished gems in the encroaching twilight. "Keep your heads down," Thomas whispered urgently, gripping his hammer tightly as he prepared for a confrontation. As they maneuvered away from the beast, Lucy scanned the area for anything that could serve as a distraction. "The roots. We can create a barrier," she suggested, gesturing to a cluster of thick brambles nearby. With quick thinking, they began to gather fallen branches and debris, forming a makeshift barricade between themselves and the basilisk. Alara could feel her heart racing. Each sound of crackling would almost felt like an invitation for the creature to attack. Just then, a sharp hiss escaped the basilisk's mouth, reverberating through the clearing and sending chills down their spines. Suddenly, Finn spotted movement behind a thicket, a glimmer of scale reflecting moonlight. "It's not alone," he urged in alarm. Panic surged through the group as they realized they could be surrounded. But as Alara caught her breath and concentrated on the task at hand, something clicked within her. She thought back to the stories about the creature's vulnerabilities. "Throw something shiny," she exclaimed. "Distract it with light." With newfound purpose, they scattered reflective objects they had on hand, the remnants of their broken lanterns, toward the beast. As it turned its gaze toward the glinting shards, Alara seized the opportunity. "Now! Move!" They dashed away from Shadowwood's heart with their lives hanging by a thread. The whispers of the forest shifted again, echoing warnings that seemed to urge them forward. In that harrowing escape, Alara grappled with her beliefs about myth and reality. Faced with an embodiment of legends once thought absurd, she now understood that this world held truths far more frightening than any fable. They had survived this encounter, but what lay ahead was an enigma shrouded in shadows, and her quest for answers about Samuel was far from complete. Returning to the village of Eldergrove felt surreal to Alara and her companions. The familiar cobblestone paths now seemed heavy with unspoken truths, and the air was thick with a mix of anticipation and disbelief. As they entered the village square, weary yet relieved, they could sense the unease that lingered among their fellow villagers. The formerly dismissive conversations about folklore had twisted into whispers of acknowledgement. Tales of the basilisk were no longer mere myths but a reality etched in scars upon their hearts. Alara's encounter with the creature played over in her mind, casting shadows over her memories of home. She found herself reflected in the wary eyes of townsfolk who once laughed at such legends. They no longer scoffed but rather regarded her band with a newfound respect. "You faced it and lived," murmured one elder, clutching an old wooden charm that was once thought to ward off evil spirits. Sitting together at the rusty lantern, a heavy silence blanketed the group as they shared their story. Thomas's hands trembled slightly as he recounted the moment they confronted the basilisk, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can't ignore what exists anymore, a creature like that changes everything." Finn nodded in agreement, his thoughts recalling how close they had come to becoming victims themselves. Lucy spoke softly, her expression pensive. "The fear we dismissed as folly has teeth and claws. We must not let our guard down." The contagion of belief spread through them as they contemplated the wisdom in ancient tales. They realized that some myths were forged from threads of truth meant to protect those who heard them. As night cast its gauzy veil over Eldergrove, Alara found herself staring into the depths of Shadowwood from her window. She understood now that belief, whether born from fear or hope, could shape their perception of reality. Tomorrow, she would rally anyone willing to listen against whatever darkness loomed beyond their borders and prepare for another journey into myth-laden shadows. No longer just seekers of truth, they were guardians standing at the precipice between two worlds, a stance of awareness fueled by both terror and determination. As the dust settled on Eldergrove, a new chapter began, one forged in the fires of experience and tempered by an unyielding quest for understanding. Alara and her companions had confronted not just a creature of myth, but the very essence of fear itself. Their reckoning with the basilisk had illuminated paths previously shrouded in skepticism, revealing that the line separating myth from reality is often perilously thin. In the evenings that followed, as villagers gathered around flickering fires, they shared tales of courage and loss, threading their personal experiences into the rich tapestry of their shared folklore. Conversations about the basilisk evolved into reflections on the nature of belief, the power of stories, and how fear can both bind and break a community. The children listened wide-eyed, filled with awe at what had been once thought to be mere bedtime stories, while adults pondered how their dismissals had led them to ignore truths lurking in shadows. Alara found herself often staring into the depths of Shadowwood from her window, contemplating the mysteries that lay beyond. She understood now that courage isn't merely the absence of fear, but rather the resolve to confront it head-on. It was a journey that reshaped not only her understanding of legends but also deepened her insight into human nature, the fears that lingered in hearts, and the innate desire to explore the unknown. Yet even as Eldergrove began to heal and adapt to its new reality, questions lingered like ghostly shapes in the twilight. What other mysteries does Shadowwood conceal? How many more truths await discovery beyond human understanding? As Alara forged ahead as a guardian of her village, she recognized that knowledge is not always empowering. Sometimes it brings with it deeper mysteries that challenge comprehension. In navigating this interplay between courage and knowledge, individuals weave their destinies through risks taken and truths uncovered. The basilisk, once a mere figment of imagination, had transitioned from a whisper in the dark into a living testament of what lies on the periphery of human experience. A reminder that even within fear lies opportunity for growth and understanding. With every sunset over Eldergrove, Alara resolved to explore these depths further, knowing that every journey into uncertainty holds within it both danger and revelation.